The shows of the DC animated universe didn't just take inspiration from the comic book source material, they also fed back into the comics by creating a handful of original characters. Some, like Harley Quinn, would go on to become household names, while others, like Red Claw, not so much. And it's a character from that latter group I wanted to talk about today, a curious case of a character created for Batman the Animated Series that did jump over to the comics once and never appeared again. However, in more recent years, another character with a very similar backstory rose to prominence in the Batman comics. I want to talk about the ninja Kyodai Ken and how I think he went on to inspire the comic book character Ghostmaker. So to kick things off, let's look at Kyodai Ken's appearances. He hasn't appeared in a lot of cartoons or comic books, so this probably won't take that long. When translating Kyodai Ken from Japanese to English, it can mean mighty fist or mighty sword, depending on the context. Personally, I prefer Mighty Fist, and I think it makes more sense given that Kyodai mostly uses his fists in battle. Anyway, Kyodai Ken made his first appearance in the btas episode Night of the Ninja. Kyodai targets subdivisions of Wayne Enterprises such as Wayne Cosmetics, emptying out their bank accounts, taking the money for himself. Kyodai wears an all-black uniform with a red sash across the waist for a pop of colour, with his eyes exposed. It's a very sleek and straightforward design with no unnecessary details, and is loosely similar to Batman's, although in this case his mouth is covered, but his eyes are exposed. This is a recurring design choice for some Batman villains that are intended to be parallels to Batman. See also Lockup. I'm still not 100% clear on the meaning of the exposed eyes. Perhaps it's supposed to indicate that they think they are realists that see things clearly, but I thought it was worth pointing out. Kyodai uses a varied arsenal in his criminal campaign, most notably a gas gun and a sword. The gas is his preferred tool. It allows him to put his targets to sleep while he stealthily slips in and cleans them out. If he gets caught, that's when his sword comes into play. That doesn't mean he's a heartless killer though. He prefers to intimidate security guards rather than slaughter them. This indicates that he has some morals, although the reality is that this was a kids show and murder was a big no-no. More on this later. When Bruce Wayne assesses the scene, the throwing star that was used to disarm the guard causes his mind to flash back to his time in Japan when he was training to become Batman. Soon afterwards, he comes into contact with Kyodai as Batman and gets caught out by his gas gun. This leads to a timely intervention from Robin, exposing Kyodai's full back tattoo and confirming Batman's suspicions. Kyodai Ken was a student at the same dojo as a young Bruce Wayne, the best student in class in fact, but he was arrogant and unkind. He took exception with Bruce Wayne being there, calling him rich man's son as a way to demean him. With his parents being dead, their wealth was his, but in Kyodai's eyes that made Bruce less than him. It wasn't his money, he hadn't earned it, he had it all handed over to him, unlike poor Kyodai who had to scrape by to make ends meet. This of course wasn't even remotely true. Truth is, Kyodai was jealous of Bruce and he picked on him as a way of making himself feel bigger. Of course, dragging other people down to your level isn't the same thing as elevating yourself, but Kyodai doesn't see it that way. And the ironic thing was that Kyodai possessed a natural skill that made fighting come easily to him. He, like Bruce Wayne, had an advantage over the other students. But try telling Kyodai that. Ultimately though, it was his attitude that would be his undoing. In reality, Kyodai was a thief, and he attempted to steal from the dojo. Bruce caught him in the act, but before they could settle their argument through combat, the sensei interrupted and cast Kyodai out. Kyodai blamed Bruce for his situation in life, later saying he was forced to become a thief. But the reality is that Kyodai was already a thief. That's what got him kicked out of the dojo after all. He refuses to accept responsibility for the choices he's made in life, and his arrogance is his downfall. The full back tattoo is something worth highlighting. In Japan, tattoos are generally associated with criminals, and full back tattoos like Kyodai's indicate that he's part of the Yakuza. The symbolic meaning of his gigantic back tattoo, a large on his face, is that it is intended to protect against evil, grant strength and empower him to overcome obstacles, which fits his character. He feels like the world is against him, despite his tremendous skill, and that everything that goes wrong in life is someone else's fault. The thing with Kyodai is that he felt he already knew everything there was to know in order to be the greatest fighter. While Bruce was never able to defeat him in his youth, he spent several years continuing to refine and develop his skills. So while Kyodai expected to meet the same old Bruce Wayne with the same limitations, instead he met Batman. There's a fun element in this episode where Bruce Wayne and Summer Gleason are kidnapped by Kyodai, but Batman feels like he can't show his true skills for fear of exposing his secret identity, and so he takes a beating from Kyodai. That is until Robin intervenes once more, knocking down a roll of carpet over Summer. This allows Batman to cut loose and trounce Kyodai. Upon realizing that he wasn't going to win the fight, Kyodai leapt through the window and dived into the waters below. It's interesting to note that in the original storyboards for this episode, Kyodai dived out of the window headfirst into the street and vanished. However, TV censors were concerned that this was an easily imitatable act, and so a body of water was added for him to dive into. Although I feel like that disappearance is less impressive, frankly. Kyodai would return in the episode Day of the Samurai. Kyodai kidnaps Kairi, the star pupil of his former sensei, and demands a very particular ransom. As an aside, fans of Batman Beyond may recognise Kairi as the woman that runs the dojo that Terry McGinnis was sent to, along with that dweeb Xander from Cobra. This time Kyodai isn't interested in money. He wants access to ancient scrolls that contain the secret to the Way of the Fang technique, a blow that causes an opponent's heart to stop beating. The technique was so dangerous that it stopped being taught centuries ago, and the only existing written instructions were hidden away. Knowing that someone like Kyodai was unfit to wield this skill responsibly, the sensei called Bruce Wayne, who must know Batman, wink wink nudge nudge. Now, this episode gets a bit of stick because the quality of the animation varies wildly from one scene to another. This is what happens when studios outsource some of the work to other less expensive studios. However, I enjoy the martial arts tropes of this storyline, from the sensei's student being kidnapped to the fact that the sensei refuses to give Kyodai false information, as that would be dishonourable, to Batman learning to counter the death touch by examining Kyodai's training dummy to see where he had been hitting it the most. And I love the final scene of this episode with Batman and Kyodai fighting hand to hand, both maskless in front of an erupting volcano. It's all so dramatic. I particularly enjoy the sequence where Batman demonstrates how beneath him Kyodai is, casually batting his blows away before responding with a disrespectful slap or two across the face. And it's the bruising of Kyodai's ego that leads to the powerful ending. As the lava begins to spread, Kyodai becomes trapped. Batman throws him a lifeline, offering to save his life. But Kyodai calmly refuses, bowing to his better before being enveloped by the eruption. Kyodai Ken literally could not live with the indignity of being defeated by the rich man's son, even though he was Batman, and chose to die instead of being saved. Kyodai is one of a very small handful of characters that actually died in Batman the Animated Series and never returned. We saw the consequences of Kyodai's death in the btas tie-in comic book Batman Adventures 24 in a story titled Grave Obligations. Kyodai's sister Naoko, who is also a skilled ninja, comes to Gotham intending to kill Batman for his part in her brother's death. Complicating matters is the fact that the leader of their clan owes a blood debt to Batman and orders her not to harm him. When she disobeys this direct order, her death is ordered, but Batman intervenes, offering to lift the blood debt in exchange for her life. The offer is gladly accepted, and when asked why he would do such a thing, he responds that the two of them are more alike than she might think. So yeah, pretty definitive there that Kyodai Ken died and wasn't going to come back, while at the same time demonstrating how honourable Batman is. Outside of the DCAU, Kyodai Ken has only made one brief appearance in the mainline DC Comics. Detective Comics 996 introduces Kyodai Ken as a guard of a monastery, although it would transpire that the whole event was a hallucination of Batman's, and there was no confirmation if Kyodai Ken even exists, and if he did, whether he had a connection to Batman or not. I like to think that Batman's imagined scenario was based on life experience, and that Kyodai Ken was out there somewhere. Even if he doesn't really exist in the comic books, there is a character that I think was inspired by Kyodai Ken, and that's Ghostmaker. Ghostmaker had been quite prominent in the Batman comics for a few years, although he is less used now. He was introduced in Batman 100 as a costume vigilante that had trained with Bruce Wayne in his youth. However, where Bruce Wayne was kind and compassionate, Ghostmaker was a literal psychopath that intended to use his skills to kill any criminals that defied him. Much like Kyodai Ken, Bruce Wayne met him while training, and he was one of the best students. However, unlike Kyodai Ken, Min-Kwa Khan, then going by the assumed name of Anton, befriended Bruce Wayne. Well, maybe befriended is a bit strong. Frenemies, maybe. There was a direct competition between the two, and they had very clear ideological differences. At one point the two came to blows, but it ended up resulting in a draw, so they vowed to stay clear of each other. As Ghostmaker, Min-Kwa turns his attention to the gangs of Southeast Asia and dedicated himself to removing them. And he was pretty successful. When Batman went through some serious struggles during the Joker War storyline, Ghostmaker came to Gotham in the mistaken belief that by this point Batman would be willing to try things his way. However, after learning that Batman was more dedicated to his mission than ever, he accepted Batman's challenge to prove himself the better man by doing things Batman's way, and that meant no killing, and running Batman Incorporated, an international supergroup consisting of heroes from across the globe inspired by Batman. So, yeah, Ghostmaker isn't exactly the same as Kyodai Ken, but I think there are enough similarities there to say that the two could be connected. His co-creator, James Tynion IV, is very open about his love of Batman the Animated Series. He was the one that introduced Roland Daggett to the comics and gave Clayface a new origin that was very similar to the one in btas, so it doesn't feel like a huge leap of logic to see what may have inspired him. I feel like Ghostmaker is a more over-the-top anime-inspired version of Kyodai Ken. Just look at that costume. It's practically the inverse of Kyodai's. And it probably won't come as much of a surprise to hear that I prefer the btas original. Having said that, it's cool to see how characters from the show could go on to inspire a similar yet legally distinct character in the comic books. Okay, that's it for this week's essay. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, tell all your friends about me. You know how YouTube works. If you really enjoyed the video and have the means, please consider making use of the thanks button to send $1 or $2 my way, because every little helps. I offer channel memberships for $1.99 a month. This will get you early access to my weekly video essay, priority responses to your comments, members-only videos, custom emojis, and an icon on your profile indicating that you're one of my people. And special thanks to my current channel members, who are all listed on the screen right now. Next time I'm returning to the streets of Metropolis to talk about a creepy and repulsive villain from Superman the Animated Series. He came 3rd place in my btas villain poll, and he is the literal embodiment of unwanted touching. It's the Parasite. I hope to see you then.